Okay. So for weekly 4, I believe it was the week of like February 7th, we went over defamation within the First Amendment. So defamation was defined in the PowerPoint as the publication of material that would tend to hold one up to hatred, ridicule, contempt, or spite. So there were 2 different types of defamation that we went over. So the first one was libel, which is a physical form of defamation, and then there's also slander, which can be considered to be the spoken form, but can also be like gestures. So defamation can be broken down into elements. An example of this would be like if Brady made a defamatory statement concerning Todd, and then that statement was published, and then that statement damaged Todd's reputation, then there's like a public-private test type of thing. So libel per se is also something that falls under the harm of like defamation. Libel per se can include criminal activity, infection of a disease like an STD or like the plague on some extreme levels, misconduct of business or profession, and for females only, unchastity. So there are 3 types of public figures. There's all-purpose, limited purpose, and involuntary. And then there are also private figures. Public and private figures are treated like in terms of defamation like 2 completely different ways. Public figures are way more liable to experience defamation without like any repercussion because they are so public, whereas a private figure like may be able to sue if the defamation is like that extreme. So when considering defamation in the First Amendment, you have to consider like actual malice, which is the knowledge of falsity and reckless disregard of truth. And then negligence is also a part of that, as the failure to act as a reasonable or ordinary person would under similar circumstances. There are also such things as a clapback. If a clapback is made in good faith and without malice, and if the privilege isn't otherwise abused. And example of this would be like when the defendant has obviously like the right to defend him or herself against the plaintiff's charges, even if the defendant like inadvertently defames the plaintiff in the process. A reply isn't the product of actual malice, and it states no more than is reasonably necessary to protect the defendant's own interest. So another part of defamation is hyperbole, parody, and satire. It's like when the material is so outrageous that like no reasonable person could believe it, and it is only actionable if defamatory facts are basis. So the last thing that I'll mention is wire service defense. So that would be like reprinting for a reputable news agency, and then like the assumption that you can't verify like all world events. So they receive materials from a reputable news gathering agency and like was unaware that the story was false and that there were no red flags that the story could be wrong and substantially unaltered. So that is what we went over for the weekly 4 discussion. So just like defamation within the First Amendment, and a lot of this was like straight from the PowerPoint of what we went over. So yeah.